Hello and welcome to the final round. I'm your host, Stephan Bonnar, joined as usual by One Kick Nick Blomgren and Matt Holt. And before we kick off Fight Night 110, anything you want to tell our viewers about anything?
We don't have a lot of new odds up. Interestingly enough, it looks like that DJ versus TJ fight's in a little bit of trouble. I think Demetrius Johnson's comments have actually got a lot of press and got a lot of people talking. I know
Because he don't want the fight.
that could be it. As well.
That's what I think. What do you think?
That was my feeling initially, and then I read his letter. In fact, I took your stance on Twitter and got fired back at by a lot of people on Twitter.
Yeah, you don't want to follow Bonner's lead on that.
We'll be getting in a lot of fights.
You're getting in a lot of trouble.
And, I thought it was interesting. Anyway, I actually read his whole letter, and I could at least understand his side. That, look, he hadn't really been promoted. That, in fact, in his last fight, he said there were literally the only promotion was 2 social media posts the week of the fight, and he showed it compared to some of the marketing some of the other fighters got. And that, look, he didn't want to fight Ray Borg, he said, which is good because none of us want to see him fight Ray Borg, who wouldn't make weight either. And he said, look, that's who they told me I had to fight, so I said okay, and they weren't going to give me any pay-per-view points, but it's Ray Borg, and he agreed to it, and then he said after he signed to fight they said, now you're fighting TJ. And, he asked for some concessions. Like, hey, if this really is a big fight, what can I get? Pay-per-view points? And according to his side, they weren't willing to make any concessions. And the one concession was, take this fight or we're getting rid of the mother effing division.
So what you're saying is everything with the UFC is just normal as usual?
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah, business as usual.
Do it our way or the highway.
Yeah.
And if you do the highway
nothing
part, he gets rid of all the 125ers. Well, everybody's out of a job.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then,
to punish one person, they punish the whole division.
Yes, and then you won't even get not only get canned, but they'll go through and say there was never a 25-pound division to begin with.
Yeah.
So the fight's not going to happen, it looks like.
No, yeah, it looks like that one's certainly in jeopardy. But on another front, it looks like they're etching ever closer to actually finalizing McGregor and Mayweather, and it looks like that's going to get an early fall date, probably late September, early October, right before Halloween.
Wow, just when I've been telling people, see, I told you so, fight's never going to happen. Now Matt comes back with this.
With the bomb news. What do you think about that fight? I don't like it.
I've been saying, I'm not answering any questions about that fight because it's never happening. And I'm sticking to that stance.
And if it happens, there's something fishy going on.
That's right. I'll believe it when I see it. But the big news this
let's
week...
Let's not forget our sponsors here.
That's right. Bitcoin Direct and...
CG Technologies.
Very good. CG Sports, CG Technology here at the Palms. The sports book's powered by
They keep taking all my money with these parlays.
Well, we're going to get hot this week, all right? The only question this week, I know who's going to win, right? That's the easy part. It's just how to match my parlay up, you know, so I maximize profits. So,
I went against the 3 picks. Again, picked 4 fights. First one lost.
Oh, yes. Just keep your parlays to 3.
Yeah, you saw me, right?
Yeah.
I broke out the CG app, and I made 3 more bets.
There were a lot of big upsets last card. We hit a couple here. We had Rafael Assunção at about plus 200, and Belfort and Nate Marquardt over 1.5 rounds, which is an easy winner at around plus 180. But when you think of all the big upsets, Alcantara getting beat at a 3-1 favorite. The total in that women's fight at minus 300 to go over ends in the first round. And there were some big upsets.
That's what killed me, that fight going over.
Yeah, we killed both of us. We were both.
And Yuri Alcantara getting submitted for the first time in his career.
Yeah.
Without even trying to get out of it.
Not much
no defense.
resistance.
Yeah.
So. But this week, UFC Fight Night 110, homecoming for Mr. Mark Hunt. Pretty much. It's in New Zealand. That's where he's from. And do you think this might be the farewell fight for him?
Yeah, I do. Look, I mean, sometimes what we talk about in sports is the value associated with a team or a player's name. And we see it a lot with, anytime the Cavs play anyone but the Warriors because they have LeBron, or the Warriors because they have Curry and Durant. You see it in football with the Packers because of Aaron Rodgers, or the Patriots or Tom Brady, where you pay a premium betting on them because of the name factor. Mark Hunt has built and established himself a name in MMA because he knocks people out, and he's always had a granite chin. But I don't think at 43 years old we can call that chin granite anymore, if we even call it a good chin, as his last 4 losses, all by knockout, that good chin's starting to fade him. And look, at a 5'10", 265 pounds, he was never fleet-footed. He never had a ground game. And if that chin's starting to fail him, I don't know how long he's going to be, how much he has left. And at 43, not many people are still fighting.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good point.
Not many people have much left at 43.
TRT.
And doesn't this feel like a spot for the UFC, whose heavyweight division isn't exactly loaded with talent under 35, to take a red-hot prospect, ranked number 5 or 6 in the division, Derek Lewis, 6 straight wins, all by knockout, and get him a win over a big name so that they can get him a big fight?
Yes, definitely. But Derek Lewis can and just might be knocked out. Let's not forget. Matt Mitrione put him to sleep with 1 punch. And also, he was knocked out by Sean Jordan. So if Mark Hunt lands one of those uppercuts like he landed on Roy Nelson, it's going to be lights out Derek Lewis.
I absolutely agree that Derek Lewis can be knocked out in this fight. I think the fight, obviously, there's going to be big punches landed because neither one of these guys has a ground game, so who's going to try to initiate a takedown here? It doesn't seem like either guy would. I don't even know if either one knows how to attempt a takedown. Never mind actually complete one and do anything.
Nothing like a boxing match with 4-ounce gloves on, right?
I mean, I think the one thing you have to like is that Derek Lewis has shown great endurance, cardio, and durability in his last fights. He was in real trouble in the first round against Travis Brown after that liver kick. Made it through it fine, knocked him out in the second round, was in real trouble against Roy Nelson. He was the one with the gas tank full of gas late where Roy Nelson gassed, and he came back and won that decision against Roy. I mean, he looks like a fighter who's matured and has showed a little bit more than, hey, I can just go in and win, whip bombs out there. And look, you don't win 6 fights in a row in the UFC by accident.
See, this fight's pretty much a pick-em, and you like Derek Lewis in this fight.
I do, and although the odds are starting to creep against us here, the sheet we have in front of us that I printed this morning says -125. And when I left the office, it was already up to -135. A lot of people, I think, like Lewis in this fight, and it's hard not to like Lewis. Hunt looked really bad in the knockout loss to Overeem, and he looked really bad in the drubbing he took from Brock Lesnar. I mean, really, Mark Hunt hasn't looked good in a long time. You look at his last 8 or 9 fights, and his only wins are against Frank Mir, no longer in the UFC anymore, never had a chin. I love Frank Mir, Southern Nevada Sports Hall of Fame. And Bigfoot Silva, who's not in the UFC anymore and got knocked out like 7 straight times before Dana finally said, whoa.
Isn't it amazing how Bigfoot Silva fought Mark Hunt to a draw, and then next fight with him he gets knocked out. But just... isn't it amazing how much better the juice makes your chin?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that all the time, about these. You seen it last week in Brazil. All the Brazilians looked a little bit flat except for the one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't think he was tested.
What was his name again?
Borrachina.
Yeah.
He just looked like a local guy that they use.
And wow,
who cares if they test him?
I had picked Eric Silva, and I hadn't seen him fight in a few years, and his body looked completely different.
Yeah, it sure did.
You see the difference when these guys aren't on the sauce.
Did not look like
and he was still winning that fight.
And he got knocked out.
I had him winning that first round and thought coming out of the second he looked good, and then, of course, he ate that combination. And I still thought it was an early stoppage, though.
He usually, the old Eric Silva could take those punches all day.
Yeah.
He didn't take him Saturday.
He's been in that testing pool for a while,
And
and
then,
it shows.
the other fight. I mean, it was the most boring fight we've seen.
Nate Marquardt?
Nate Marquardt.
Versus Vitor. Two guys who really didn't go after.
They just looked at each other half the round and just tried to do just enough
Sparring
at the end of the
match.
fight just to.
Not to get booed.
Yeah.
The main event, though, may have been the best main event we've seen in 2017 because it was so anticipated.
Oh,
The
yes.
guys were so even. Aldo came out fireworks early.
I had him win in the first 2 rounds.
So did I. And then, of course,
And then he
Holloway
slowed
hits that
down
three-piece
this
on him.
much.
Yeah.
And
what did we say? He had to slow down Holloway. And I said with leg kicks, interestingly enough, he never
no
threw
leg
one
kicks.
crack. Yeah,
no
not
leg
one.
kick.
I think
0.
he threw that one leg kick and he blocked it.
It's
And then, I didn't want to
all
throw
right,
it no
at
more. He must
most
have hurt it.
one.
Yeah,
But
I
that's a
didn't think
huge
he threw
weapon
any.
for him.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that while I was watching it, where's the leg kicks?
Yeah.
Where's the leg? Like if I had
had
low
an
kicks
injury.
like that, I'd be throwing them like crazy. Yeah, maybe he was injured because that didn't make any sense. But I knew if Holloway weathered the storm and could just get Aldo to slow down a little bit, the fight
Or
would
he
be
was
his.
thinking,
And
if I throw these hard leg kicks, it's going to make me tired.
I don't know. They don't take a lot of
Because
energy.
he looked like he ran out of gas.
He just slowed down a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But Holloway kept that pressure on.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
one of his big weapons.
3-shot combo he landed to drop him to start the end was awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had him in trouble, and he made him work.
Yeah.
He kept changing from position to position to make him work even harder.
Yeah, kept that pressure on. Back to fight night. Matt over here likes Derek Lewis. I like Mark Hunt. Nick?
I like the over.
What about who's going to win or lose?
Well, I don't know. It's a tough
A
one.
round and a half.
But I
This
think it
fight,
can go a round and a half, I think.
God, this fight.
That's one of my bets, actually.
This
One
guy-
of my
you
bets
think
for
it's
this
going
card.
over?
Yeah, one of the bets I have listed on this card is $110 to make 100 on the under 1.5 rounds. Look, Mark Hunt's been knocked out 4 times in his last 4 losses. Last 4 official losses, not counting the Brock Lesnar fight. Derek Lewis's only 2 losses are by knockout, and Derek Lewis has a 95% finishing rate. And do you know out of Mark Hunt's 11 losses, how many are by decision?
0?
0. He
Why-
has
wait,
11 losses, all by finish.
Why do you like the over then?
No, I like the under. Under
Oh,
1.5 rounds.
Nick said the over.
I'm saying the over, yeah. I think they'll go over.
Nick
a round
likes
and a
the
half.
over. You
Yeah,
like
I
the
like the
under.
under. I bet it's the
I
under.
kind of like the under. You like Derek Lewis. I like Mark Hunt. And you just start picking over.
I think I just pick over because
stick with that.
I think they're gonna be a little cautious in the first round and then let the sparks fly in the second.
But these guys don't do anything but bang. They don't do jiu-jitsu. They don't wrestle.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're heavyweights. It only takes 1 punch. I mean,
Yeah.
Yes,
what are they
that
going
might
to
be
do
a
the
better
first
bet.
round? What are they going to do for 2 rounds if they're not throwing haymakers at each other?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just hoping that right after the halfway mark.
then someone gets knocked out. Yeah,
knocked
yeah.
out.
Well,
But I think that's where I'm going to go. I'm just going to go with the over.
Whew, man. Well, I'll go Hunt. Yeah, it might be a better pick, though, going under. Because, I mean, interesting stat. If any fight's most likely to win the first round, it's a heavyweight fight. And, man, yeah, Derek Lewis, I know his fight with Mitrione ended really early. What about Sean Jordan? Was that a first rounder?
I think it was I think it was.
So,
His last fight, what was that? 2 rounds?
Early in the second, he knocked Travis Brown out.
yeah,
was
so it
early
might
in
have
the
been
second?
right there. And it's a 5-round main event. That's what you got going for you more than anything.
Yeah.
I think it's 5 rounds, and they might
5 rounds, they might
take
pace
a
themselves.
feeling out round. So,
Yeah.
And you're right. The knockout could occur, second half of the second round, and they wouldn't have done too much. So 5 rounds, they might be a little more patient. It's not a 3-round fight. That's something else to take into note. Moving down the card, Daniel Kelly, Derek Brunson. 2.5 to 1 favorite is Derek Brunson in this fight, and rightfully so. Daniel Kelly's not going to knock him down, and he's not going to be able to really use his judo on him because Brunson's wrestling is really solid.
Do you realize that Daniel Kelly has been an underdog in 6 straight fights, and he's 5-1 in those fights? 5-1 in his last 6 fights as an underdog in every one of them, and in some of them are pretty substantial underdog. He was an almost 3-1 underdog to Rashad Evans, and an almost 3-1 underdog to Antonio Carlos Jr.
Okay, his fight with Rashad Evans, razor close.
Yes,
and he won a split decision. Derek Brunson, if he fought Rashad Evans, I think I'd put my money on Brunson.
I agree. Look, I really like Derek Brunson in this fight, but we've made a case, or not just you and I and Nick, but obviously the odds makers, because he's been an underdog 6 in a row. Everyone thinks he's going to lose every fight. This guy finds a way to win fights.
Is there a better? I mean, I like Brunson this fight. Are you thinking? Are you saying that Daniel Kelly is a good underdog to put money on?
No. I actually used Brunson in a parlay. I'm blown away by Daniel Kelly. He looks 50. I know he's only 39, but he looks 59. He has 2 huge knee braces on. Yes. He can barely move.
I like, in his post-fight interview, how he thanked his knee brace for holding up. So.
I mean, he's amazing.
And, Derek Brunson, his last fight with Silva, he just didn't do anything. He looked shell-shocked.
But he didn't come out with his chin up like he did against Robert Whittaker.
That's right.
Against Robert Whittaker, he was just throwing bombs, but he's going forward with his chin up.
Yeah,
he kept his chin down against Anderson Silva and wasn't as aggressive.
Right. He changed his what was
style.
Working for him.
Yeah.
But I thought that fight was razor close, too, with him and Anderson. There wasn't a ton of action on either side. You probably could have made a case for either guy.
Yeah. I was surprised.
He just didn't look like he wanted to be there.
I was surprised, though. I think he was surprised Anderson was able to stuff his takedowns as good as he did.
Do you think do you think him getting knocked out
made him a little shy? Definitely, yeah. Especially the fight before. Now you're fighting Anderson Silva. Before I just got knocked out for being too aggressive and keeping my chin high. Yeah, I'm gonna put my chin down, which he did, and I'm gonna hold back and not be as aggressive. Definitely.
And look, the one, real glaring weakness we have seen from Daniel Kelly has been how he takes the big right hand. Sam Alvey one-punch KO'd with the big right. We've seen him get hurt and stumbled from big right hands a couple times. Sugar Rashad had a big right but didn't really throw it against Kelly. The one thing Brunson has is a big right hand, and I think he was on a 4 or 5 straight KO streak before the Robert Whittaker. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if he lands that big right, I think Daniel Kelly could be in trouble.
Or the big left hook. He's got a hell of a left hook. Just ask, drawing a blank with Uriah Hall.
Yep.
He put him down with a left hook in that fight. So hopefully come out aggressive and bombing. I like him in this fight and agree with Matt that this is a good fight to work into your parlay because Brunson, in my opinion, is a lock.
I like Brunson. I just hope we see the old Brunson in this fight.
Well, to your point, remember we talked about it going into the Anderson Silva fight. How do you react after a devastating knockout? For a guy on a big win streak, when you get knocked out cold, how do you come back? And we saw against Anderson, he came back a little timid. Yeah. But we know this guy's super talented. He comes from a great camp, and he knows this is a must-win.
And Daniel Kelly's no Anderson Silva.
That's right, yeah.
So that's a guy that you can be a little more aggressive with.
Yeah.
That's what I said to Nick earlier. Haven't we seen 15 different guys go into shells against Anderson Silva? Nate Marquardt, Talis Leitas, the guy that went to WSOF, the tall Korean kid. I'm blanking on his name, but a lot of people have, been real aggressive. And Nate Marquardt was a big puncher, knocked Damian Maia out cold, got in there against Anderson. And look, Anderson Silva can do that to you. His movement's difficult to time. He's super long. He's not the first guy to kind of shell up a little bit against Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
Right.
Fight I really like in terms of the underdog, although he's moving down. He was plus 190 a few days ago. I didn't rush and put my money down. Now he's only plus 135, and that's Ross Pearson fighting a Dan Hooker in this fight. And I like Ross Pearson a lot in this fight because Dan Hooker is very tall. He has a skinny neck. He does have the capabilities of get knocked out definitely by Ross Pearson. Although Ross isn't a huge finisher as of late, I think he can finish Dan Hooker in this fight. And also, Dan Hooker can't spell defense. He gets hit all the time. So
I was looking at that fight. Ross Pearson, 1 win out of his last 5.
Yeah.
And then Hooker,
3-3.
Yes,
in the UFC.
He's like an Njokuani. He wins every other one.
Yes. Yeah, 3-3 in his
and
last 6 fights.
0-3 against guys who have ever been ranked in the UFC.
And, I mean, if he could lose a decision to Maximo Blanco because he got outstruck, I definitely think he could lose a decision to Ross Pearson from being outstruck or even get knocked out.
I went back and forth on this one. I almost jumped on your side to take Ross Pearson as a dog, but I also missed the good line. And we know how important it is. We saw it last week. I only got plus 165 with Rafael Asuncao. I saw some people get as high as plus 210. That can make a big difference at the end of the day. I ended up making a play on this card, on this fight here. I laid $155 to make 100 at minus 155 on the over 2.5 rounds. Look, Ross Pearson went the distance with Jorge Masvidal, a top 5 guy at 170 pounds. Diego Sanchez, Al Iaquinta, Stephen Ray in his last fight. Ross Pearson's durable. He's in there for the long haul almost every single fight, and his punching power seems to have declined a little bit as he's been in all these wars. He's turned into a little bit more of a volume striker than a power puncher. And on the other side of it, if Jorge Masvidal and these big 155, or in Masvidal's case, 170 pounders couldn't put Ross Pearson away, how's a career 145er and Dan Hooker going to put him away?
No way.
Yeah.
So I thought the over in this fight felt really safe to me. And look, Dan Hooker's 3-3 in the UFC, 0-3 against guys that have been ranked: Maximo Blanco, Yair Rodriguez, and I forget the other one. But he actually went decisions.
Losses.
That's right. All 3 of those losses were
Stevie
decisions.
Ray. No. Knight, Blanco.
Oh, Jason Knight, yeah. Jason Knight, Yair Rodriguez, and Maximo. And he went the distance in all 3. So this just feels like a fight destined for the scorecards to me, and at minus 155 seems like a fair price.
Nice. Are
That's
you
an
taking
interesting
that straight
point.
up? Are you working
Yeah.
that into the parlay?
No, that's my straight up. I do have a parlay I'll announce at the end, but I'm just 155 to make 100. Fight going over 2.5.
Nice. Good bet. Yeah. I think
And that'll make you think right there. What's the safer bet?
Look, I like parlays, but
picking
we got to
Ross
be
to
honest.
win or
Yeah.
Picking Ross to win or just picking the
I
over?
think I wouldn't be surprised if Ross stopped this guy just because Hooker's defense is so bad. And for a tall guy, he doesn't use his size. It's not like he fights behind his jab and he's really long. He just walks straight forward. He doesn't really use his size. Extremely tall guy at 145 pounds. 6 feet tall, 145, but doesn't use it. Walks straight forward, easy to hit. See, that's an interesting one. I like him as the dog, but I think there is a possibility that he knocks Dan Hooker out.
That's what you're picking?
Yes.
I think if you like Pearson a lot, then you can also correlate it with a knockout at least, because I can't see Hooker stopping Pearson.
Correct.
I think really the only one that could get stopped is Hooker by Pearson, but I can't see Pearson getting stopped by Hooker here.
Yeah, I like Ross Pearson in this fight, but I really like what you said about the over.
Yeah, the over, that keeps you thinking.
And look, while it's nice to build parlays, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell the fans, if you're going to make money in betting MMA or betting anything, you have to make more straight bets than parlays, which is why I try to make mostly straight bets, and then I throw a little smaller parlay in every week.
And do you like the idea of keeping the parlays to 3 fights or less?
Whatever you want to do. Consider the parlay a bomber. Like last week, I hit 2 big underdogs, and then I lost the parlay. But in the long run, your straight bets will make it. It's so hard to hit parlays.
Yeah.
You have to go 3-0 or 4-0. That trust me, as someone who's made odds and worked at a sports book for a long time, I could tell you that your probability of hitting parlays is a lot less.
I'm starting
than
to
hitting
believe
straight bets.
All right. Henrique de Silva versus Ian Cutelaba. Henrique de Silva, he's got some losses on his record. Paul Craig, Jordan Johnson. He leaves his chin up a lot. And he's a striker. He's not known for his jiu-jitsu, so he's not going to be too hard to hit. Cutelaba, better wrestler. He'll be able to dictate where this fight goes. If he wants to take Henrique down, I think he can, but I expect him to stand up and try to knock him out. He does throw bombs, and he has a really, really good chin. And I like him in this fight, but there's really no value at minus 290.
Boys, this thing ballooned. I mean, just a couple of days ago when I sent you the openers, we sent out minus 190 as an opener, minus 290 here on the sheet this morning, already over minus $3, and I'm just not sure I'm in love with it. I watched Kudalaba fight here against Jared Cannonier that night, and it was a slugfest, and I do agree that his chin, he has a good chin. He took some bombs in that fight and stood in there. But at the end of the day, he also seems slow. And even when he went for a shot, it was kind of slow. And, I mean, I wasn't overly impressed. The chin was definitely there, and he definitely throws big punches as well. But I certainly don't want to lay minus 300.
No way.
Maybe 190, you could have talked me into it, but certainly not now.
You think this might be a good time to pick the dog? Because the thing about Henrique da Silva that impresses me is his cardio. He has a good gas tank for a big guy.
Yes.
He moves pretty well the whole time, and he's got a decent chin himself.
Yeah, maybe not. Look, the total in this fight's only 1.5 rounds. So if you just get to round 3 or halfway through round 2, you're home there. The problem with that, too, is you got to lay 185 to the over because it's only 1.5 rounds instead of 2.5. I ended up completely passing on this fight because the line just ballooned too much for me. I wasn't in love with the underdog, and I didn't want to lay the juice with the over.
Well, Nick, anything on this
Yeah,
fight?
I mean, the odds are just too bad, so... I mean, I don't see laying 300.
Really, yeah. There's anything, it's probably going to go over a round and a half. It's just whether it's worth the price of minus 185.
Yeah.
And to Matt, it isn't. That might be the best bet in this fight. Ben Nguyen. I always want to say Nguyen. Ben Nguyen versus Tim Elliott, and I think
I would have said it.
I think Tim Elliott, he's only minus 210. I expected him to be a higher favorite in this fight. Really, the only people Ben Nguyen beats is guys he has better ground than. He does not have better ground than Tim Elliott. He's not a puncher, so I don't see him knocking Elliott out. And Elliott's a better wrestler. He's going to dictate where the fight goes. I think Nguyen's only chance of winning is catching him in a crazy submission like we saw happen to Alcantara. If he falls into a guillotine or into a triangle. But other than that, I like Tim Elliott big time in this fight, and I like at minus 210, I think there's some value in putting him in a parlay. Yeah, Derek Brunson is minus 260. You might want to look, I'll put him in a parlay, but at minus 210, would Tim Elliott be the better choice?
I tried to talk myself onto Ben Nguyen. I said, let me find a way where I think he can win this fight. And at the end of the day, I couldn't really. I'm with you. I thought, well, maybe, what he is really good at is scrambles. Maybe he can get out of the Tim Elliott takedowns, outwork him on his feet a little bit, because I do think he's pretty athletic, Ben Nguyen. The fight with Smoko was awesome. They both had some awesome scrambles in there. But I just couldn't find a way he wins. I thought it was more likely that Tim Elliott takes him down, holds him down, use that really heavy top game he has, but that the fight goes the distance. So then I looked at the total, but the problem is I don't want to lay minus 200 that the fight goes over either. I think it's probably going to the judges' scorecards here. Neither one of these guys really a potent finisher. I don't want to lay minus 200 to the over because when you have that many guys on the ground scrambling, you could get caught in a submission. I ended up passing on this one too.
What do you think is a better fight to lay into a parlay? Taking Elliott on this fight or taking Brunson on the other fight with Daniel Kelly?
I guess I have to say taking Brunson only because I did make a parlay and Brunson's on it. I have Brunson, J.J. Aldrich, and John Moraga, however you say his name, Mokhtarian over rounds. That's my 3-team parlay, 65 to make $175. Derek Brunson minus 260, J.J. Aldrich minus 220 against the 19-year-old Korean, and John Moraga and Mokhtarian over 2.5 rounds minus 120, 65 to make 175. But I think if you took Brunson out and plugged Elliott in, you're getting
the same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. All right. That answers my question. Next we have Mizuto Hirota against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, these smaller guys age a little quicker than bigger guys. I mean, it's just what I found to be true. You know, if the guy's fighting in his 40s, he's either a heavyweight like Mark Hunt or Dan Henderson and Randy Couture light heavyweight. Do you think his Hirota, his best days are behind him?
100%. And this is another line that opened in the like mid 250 to 260 range. That's 435 now. Look, I do think Hirota's best days are well behind him, and I certainly had anticipated using Volkanovski in a parlay. The problem is Volkanovski hasn't proved it. He hasn't really proved anything, and I'm not laying 435 with a guy who hasn't beaten anybody, proved anything. Should he win this fight? Absolutely. Is Hirota probably done? Absolutely, but I don't want to lay that kind of price tag.
This is only Volkanovski's second UFC fight. Right. And it's not like he's really big and long and a crazy. I mean, you see on his record, he has a lot of early stoppages, but they're not against quality guys at the UFC level. So, like, yeah, Matt said, we really don't know too much about him. He's strong. He's a physically strong guy. He hits hard, but you know, there's some holes in his games. We haven't seen too much. Like, I mean, I don't know. Would you be as would you go as far to say this might be a good fight to pick a huge dog in? Because Hirota is got a good record in the UFC. He's 3-0-1.
Somebody asked me that earlier, and although I personally didn't bet that fight, this is what I told them. From an odds maker standpoint, let me give you a bet that makes a lot of sense. If you are tempted to bet this fight anyway, bet under 2.5 rounds at plus 155. Because at plus 155, Hirota can punch. If he's going to win this fight and pull the upset, it's probably going to be a knockout. And at guys at his age, and we've seen Hirota a few times, if Volkanovski gets on top of him and just starts raining down at his age, it's probably the ref's going to be more apt to get in there and stop it because he has a tendency to turtle up on the bottom. If Volkanovski gets that heavy top game and starts that ground and pound, it could get stopped too. And at plus 155, yeah, you don't get the huge payoff you would get from Hirota, but then if Hirota gets stopped too, you get the win. So if I was going to bet the fight, that's the only place I would look is under 2.5 rounds, plus 155.
That's a good point, and that does it for the main card. Nick, either of these guys call anything out to you?
I agree with Matt. I mean, if you're gonna do this, Hirota's old, still a good puncher. So if he catches this guy, but you know,
old for a little guy, for a big guy, he'd be in his prime. Yeah. Well, that does it for the main card. The undercard guys, I'm not touching personally. There's no one that I have too strong of a feeling about either way. But there are a couple undercard fights that you like, Matt.
I made my third and final straight bet. I bet $120 to make $100 on Damian Brown. Vink Pitchell hasn't fought in over 3 years now, since May of 2014, and it wasn't because of injury. He just couldn't afford to fight. So this is a guy that just stepped away from the sport, basically. His last fight, he made $8,000 to show, $8,000 to win, and he said, look, I can't afford to train and live and do it on this. So he stepped away from the sport. Now, 3.5 years later, he's decided to try to come back and do it. In the time that he's been away from the cage, Damian Brown has fought 10 times. This will be Damian Brown's 5th fight since February 2016 last year. So 13 months, 5 fights. I mean, this guy stays really active. I love the fact that he's really active. He's looked good in the UFC in a few fights, and he's on a 2-fight winning streak, Damian Brown, right now. 32, probably right in his prime. He's the local hero here from Australia, so he's going to be motivated to put on that big performance in front of his hometown against a guy who's been away for 3.5 years, now he's going to travel across the world. I'm not 100% sure Vink Pitchell just didn't get a free Australia vacation after not fighting for almost 4 years and making the comeback. Oh, I'll go to Australia, sure.
You know, and look who's working his corner, his wife.
Wow. You hit that one on the head. And you also like J.J. Aldrich in the women's fight.
Yeah, I used her in my parlay, and I don't want to say that I have a bias against really young people in the UFC, but mixed martial arts, unlike boxing and some of these other sports, is so diverse, and there's so many skill sets you need to learn that I tend to find that these 18 and 9-year-olds do run into problems a little bit. And that's, the opponent here is 19 years old and in Chan Mi Young. And that seems awful young, despite the fact that she's undefeated. She's unproven, never fought anybody. And J.J. Aldrich, basically, I think she only had 7 or 8 fights, but most of them came in Invicta against some real opponents now. She's been in the UFC, has a UFC win under her belt. Still only like 23 herself, but her level of competition has basically 8 fights against some of the top women in the world. I really love that experience. I think it should carry her through here, so I put her in a parlay.
And other than that, on the undercard, I think you mentioned the Moraga fight against Mokhtarian.
Yeah, I used the total on that fight. Look, John Moraga has been in a really bad way ever since fighting for the title against Demetrius Johnson. I mean, this is a guy who was ranked number 1 in the world, got a title shot against Demetrius Johnson, and is now 3-5 in his last 8 fights, including on a current 3-fight losing streak to Joseph Benavidez and Sergio Pettis in his last fight beat Moraga. But the one thing Moraga does against all those guys is he goes the distance. He loses all these fights by decision. So I think this is a fight where he's probably going to go the distance. This is Mokhtarian's actual UFC debut, and while his record looks nice on paper at 12-1, he's never fought anybody either. Doesn't look to be an overwhelming puncher. I think Moraga is definitely good for the distance here, and I can't see him knocking anybody out. It's just not his style, so I went ahead and put that. I was going to bet it straight, but at that time I already had 3 straight bets, but I certainly would recommend over 2.5 rounds. You only have to lay -120.
That's yeah.
Seems pretty reasonable. I mean, 125ers aren't normally big finishers anyway, and John Moraga especially is not a big finisher, who's proved to be durable in losses.
A fight's most likely to end in the first round. It's a heavyweight fight. Fight's most likely to go the distance. I'd say it's a flyweight fight at 125. So that's pretty good odds. Why do you think the odds aren't a little better that it's going to go the distance?
I don't know. Sometimes, you just look at guys' records. So this Mokhtarian, I think he had 6 submissions, 6 submissions, 6 KOs, and like 14 or 15 wins. So his finish rate was actually really high. But they're all against guys on the regional circuit in Australia. I'm not trying to bag on the regional circuit in Australia, but yeah, I mean, he hasn't fought anybody of the caliber of this. And so I watched a couple of his fights, and he doesn't look like the kind of guy who has big punching power. He didn't look like his punches were devastatingly powerful, and a lot of times you get a lot of submissions on the regional circuit because people aren't quite equipped at defending them yet. So,
anything else on the undercard jump out at you?
The only thing that jumped out at me is this Dong Young Kim T-Bolt Goody fight opened with Dong Young Kim around a 150-155 favorite and has dropped all the way down to basically a pick. I have no opinion on this fight, but T-Bolt Goody is a French guy, 30 years old, entered the UFC undefeated, has fought 3 times in the UFC, got dominated and finished all 3 fights, including getting knocked out in the first round by Chad Laprise in his last fight. Nothing against Chad Laprise, but he's not exactly a bomber either. Goody has looked completely overmatched in 3 UFC fights, yet they're betting the crap out of him again.
Wow. Yes. Why isn't Donger a little heavier favorite in this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure. He hasn't been great in the UFC, but he's kind of a win one, lose one, 50-50 guy. Pretty tough.
Pretty solid.
Yeah, pretty solid. I mean, at least he has UFC experience, and he's won some fights in the UFC. Look, I had no opinion on this fight. I had no intention of touching it, but if Dong Young Kim turns into the underdog in this fight, I may make a little wager.
Nice. All right. Well, there you have it about. I think the best value here is Ross Pearson as an underdog. And other than that, I like working Tim Elliott into a parlay. And yeah, I think I'm going with Mark Hunt. I'm a Mark Hunt fan, so I might just throw that one in my parlay.
Fanboy bet.
Fanboy bet. But also, I think he's got a chance. I mean, if he lands, he could knock out Lewis for sure.
They could both knock each other out for sure.
Yeah, I like on a parlay. I like Damian Brown, and then I like the the Ross Pearson, and then I like the over on the Mark Hunt fight.
All right.
I'm betting the under on the Mark Hunt fight. Actually, I already bet it. I got the over on the Ross Pearson fight. And then I have Damian Brown. I bet Damian Brown, too. And then I have a parlay with Derek Brunson, J.J. Aldrich, and the over in the John Moraga Mokhtarian fight.
And then I'm going to look at that, what you talked about, the Vince Pitchell fight, the over.
Yeah.
It got me thinking about that now.
No, I think you took Damian Brown straight up.
I'm betting Damian Brown straight
Yeah.
up. I'm betting the over on John Moraga versus Mokhtarian.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Matt
what's
and Nick
interesting
think
about
there's...
Vince Pitchell? He's 9-1 with 7 knockouts. He has 3 fights in the UFC, 2-1 in the UFC. So he entered the UFC 7-0, 7 knockouts. Never got a knockout in the UFC.
Yeah.
All his fights were grindouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fought.
And he got knocked out in his only loss. You know, that Rustam Khabilov picked him up, suplexed him, and then punched him out.
Huh. Interesting. All right, so there you have it. The best value on the card from Matt is probably, I'm just guessing, with Damian Brown.
Yeah, I really
Nick's
like
taking
Damian
it as
Brown.
well. And I think it's with Ross Pearson. We both got Ross. And other than that, that's about all I have for UFC Fight Night 110. Good luck in your bets. Good luck in your parlays.
And don't forget, tweet your...
Yeah, tweet your... We're going to start a promotion. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we said tweet your parlays at us, and we'll try to send you some stuff. And...
we have a few winners.
Yeah, we're gonna try to put a real promotion around it so we can start randomly picking some people and sending them some cool stuff. Maybe we'll make Stephan sign some stuff for guys.
You hear that, everyone? Free stuff. All you have to do is take your parlays and tweet them to us that you're already putting in. So you really don't have to do anything.
And
if
you pick the bets that whatever your picks were, and say I'm going with Stephan's pick, you'll get something too, right?
There you go. Sure. Yeah. We'll find a way to send them something.
All right. For Matt Holt, Nick Blomgren, I'm Stephan Bonnar saying see you next time.